Since the Industrial Revolution, we've been putting vast amounts of carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere, and it stays there. But it holds heat, carbon dioxide. And so as it stayed there and as the concentration of carbon dioxide has moved up, the atmosphere has got hotter and hotter. So when people talk about climate change, they immediately talk about carbon dioxide because that's the link. Forests are disappearing the world over. Over here, we lose 1 million hectares in Russia because of a drought. We lose 30,000 hectares here because of a fire. We lose 600,000 hectares here because of drought, fire, pests. Why is that? Because of climate change, because of all the carbon we're putting into the atmosphere. Temperatures are going up, and the poor old forests, in places that we haven't seen fire for thousands of years, are now becoming so dry and so hot that fire comes in and burns these very sensitive forests down. We are headed for a 6 or 7 degree warming of the planet, and at 6 or 7 degrees no large mammal can live on planet Earth. And so when we think about large mammals, we think about cows and all those things, but we've got to look in the mirror. We are large mammals too. Sounds a bit horrifying and it's a scary story, but it is a scary story. And when you hear people denying climate change, it's, well, all of the world's best scientists are basically saying it's all because of human activity on the planet. That, on the one hand, sounds like bad news, but the good news is we can change that human activity. We can change it, and so we can change to reduce the amount of carbon that we put up into the atmosphere, but most importantly, we can start taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So I looked at that and I thought, well, okay, what can we do about that? Well, the reality is we've got to we've got to take carbon out of the atmosphere so we bring the temperatures back down. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But it's something, and people say, well, yes, that's 100 years away. Yeah, so we need to start today. So imagine a bucket, and I've got a tap, and water is flowing into the bucket. And reducing emissions is about turning the tap to a lower setting. Eventually the bucket will overflow anyway, okay? It'll overflow. When we talk about reducing emissions, we're just talking about turning the tap down a little bit, but we're still putting water into the bucket. We're still putting carbon into the atmosphere. The bucket will overflow and it'll be a mess and it'll be a disaster. So what I'm talking about is taking water out of the bucket. But what about us? What could we do? What could I do as an individual? And what could we, TFT, do as an organisation? So I thought to myself, well, why don't we work out all of the carbon that we've put up into the atmosphere since we started TFT back in 1999, since our inception? We've had flights, we've had all sorts of travel, just the operation of the offices. How much carbon have we emitted into the atmosphere? And imagine if we took responsibility and said, let's take all that carbon out of the atmosphere. Let's take it out, get it into the soils, get it into trees, get it into some mechanical process that maybe hasn't been developed yet. But let's take that carbon out of the atmosphere. And I think if we do it, not a huge organisation, but if we do it, we can set the path for others and we can inspire. The project is about inspiring. And we're grateful to the people from the South Pole Group for giving us that information about our historic footprint. And now our mission in life is to get that out of the atmosphere, reduce our emissions going forward, and invest in projects the world over as an organisation, and at least me as an individual, to take that carbon out of the atmosphere. So I can put my hand on my heart and say, I didn't put any of that carbon up there. We did, but now we've taken it out. Imagine if everyone did that. It'd be really cool.